Okay, so I think we're live again. So welcome once again, everybody. So today we're going to work with authority lists and indices in the first part of our training. And I will start with some like theoretical basis for this, and then we will do some markup all together. And yes, we have the new inscription that Janan kindly provided us with, and we will work our way in that direction. But first of all, so here, and okay, I'm hearing my voice, which is not good. Here in our shared document, I added some links to our slideshow for today, and the two parts of EFES guidelines regarding the authority lists. So we won't go into the details of the guidelines, but you have the links, so you can you know where to find them. And we will have a look now at the presentation on authority lists in EpiDoc. So this is, even though this is our EFES session, authority lists do not only exist in EFES, but I now see that I did not share my screen, so sorry. Yes, so the title here is authority lists in EpiDoc, because as I was saying, even though we're talking actually about EFES right now, authority lists and authority files exist independently. So they're not an EFES feature, they're not even an EpiDoc feature, to be honest. They are, as Mitko told us the other day, they are pretty much controlled vocabularies. And they can be, as you can see here on the slide, they can be both external or internal to a project. In this case, they would be TI files. And in our case, in our EFES environment, they are internal to our project, because we saw already that they live within the EFES folder. And the main reason we have authority lists in the end is that they force us to be consistent within a corpus, between editors, and also among corpora once the authority files and the authority lists become shared. And why do they enforce consistency? We saw that already the other day with Mitko, is that the authority lists are based upon XML IDs, and XML IDs must be unique. You can't have two XML IDs with the same letters and the same digits. So they are kind of a birth certificate for the item that you are referring to. And they are used for information within the text, within the corpus, that is not semantic markup. So for example, no abbreviations, no lacunae, so there is no index of lacunae, for example. But we have, on the other hand, for example, an index of personal names, of place names, because this is additional information to our file. And first of all, it prevents the repeated entering of the same data. So imagine that you have 50 inscriptions, and on every of these 50 inscription, there's the name Yorgos. You're not going to write all the same thing over and over again 50 times, thus amplifying the possibility of mistakes that you're going to make, but you enter it once and then you point to it. It makes it very, very easy to link to external resources, and we will see in a minute how. Yes, it separates pretty much the information on the item that you're referring to from the content and the context that you have this item into. So when, for example, we made beforehand the example of the Protospatharius, for example, okay? When you are pointing to an item in the authority list, you're not pointing to that precise Yorgos Protospatharius. You're pointing to the term Protospatharius. You're pointing to the dignity of Protospatharius, which is independent from the context you have that name into. So let's see how what we can do with authority lists. So as you can see here, this is a first name, so a personal name, and the tagging is very easy and straightforward. You have, as we learned the other days, you have the first name tag and the ref. And the ref points to the lexicon of Greek personal names as an external URL. So that would be the case, you guess it, of an external control vocabulary, let's say. You can also have, as we saw, an internal list of persons, which would be the authority list person.xml, and you can point to this person in your internal authority file, and this would be the way you point to it. So this would be the XML ID of the item within the list. Here you see it. This would be the entry in the authority list persons.xml. And we saw yesterday, the list is called list person, and each item is called person. So person XML ID, this would be the XML ID that points you to this very Diodotos, and the additional information within this authority list of personal names is the lexicon Greek of personal names that we saw here. So instead, instead of referring directly to an external resource, we have an internal one which brings us either way to the external resource. So what can be used for in the authority lists? We can have historical and descriptive data, as for example, the material of which our inscription is made, the object types, dating criteria, or hand or letter types. I'm sorry, which is very relevant, for example, for epigraphy on stone. It is, of course, less relevant for other kind of epigraphies, as, for example, I almost made the same example, I'm so sorry, lead seals. We do not have an authority list of material because it would only be one item, it will only be lead. Or if we want to be very generous, we will have lead, silver, and gold. But that is not the case. Whereas, for example, for epigraphy on stone, you can have all kind of different kind of stones. Then you can have also authority lists of elements mentioned in the text. So different between the historical and descriptive data and the elements mentioned in the text is, you guessed it, the first one refers to metadata, the second one to the edition proper. So, and elements mentioned in the text can be persons, can be person names, can be places, events, offices, dignities, ideas, theological formulas, and so on and so forth. As you can see, the punctuation here means that this list is pretty much, can go pretty much as long as you wish or as your project needs. However, we can have some some general lists, and here you have the link to the guidelines of EpiDoc and to the indexing of other, let's say, features. And the way of pointing to this kind of lists would be always the same, pretty much. So you would have an authority list called, for example, materials.xml, and you would have each item referred to as we saw before. And how would you then point to this authority list within your metadata? Like this, we saw material ref materials.xml hashtag. Here we're talking about bronze. There is also a way which we will not explore in these days. In this day, actually, we're almost at the end of writing a piece of code that says that every time that we have within a ref this kind of string, so name.xml hash something else, that it substitutes it, or better, instead of substituting it, that whenever you have an hash within ref within material, it brings you automatically to the materials.xml authority list. In this way, the tagging and all the information within your text become less cumbersome, because imagine that you have only to write this, so hash s, instead of writing materials.xml hash blah blah. This becomes, first of all, less cumbersome. Second of all, it minimizes kind of the possibility of mistakes that you can make. Then let's go to the authority list of persons, and again, you can just click on the link that you have here and go to the latest guidelines of EpiDoc and have a look at the indexing of persons. And we already saw yesterday how a list of persons is made of. We have the biggest element that contains the whole list, and this element is list person, and each item within the list is person. So, and within the item person, you can have, so you must have the person name. You can have many other information, because of course, in order for your can you please mute yourself? Okay. 1 second. Okay, sorry. There was a noise in the background. And I was saying the most important thing is that you can refer to a person, and the least information that you can have is this person's name, of course. But here you can see that we have a identity number type, this IDNO type, and we have, in this case, for example, the lexicon of Greek personal names. And you have the link to an external resource, or you can have, as will be the case, for example, very often in our corpus of Byzantine lead seals, you have an IDNO type which points you not to an external resource which is accessible online, but to an external publication. And in this case, we have the prosopography of the late Roman Empire. As I was saying, within the authority list of person, you can add many information, and much information, and this is what you can add pretty much. You can add the dates at birth, at death or the floor rate. You can add important events that you have relating to this person. I don't know, for example, Constantine, just a random example. And you have also the bibliography. So you can add, if you have them, some bibliographic references. Or here, for example, you can add also a relation type. Okay, these examples are completely nonsense, so it's not real. But this is just for the sake of the argument. You can add, as you can see here, a type of relation, which is very interesting if you manage to do this kind of to add this kind of information in your corpus. You can add information between the relation regarding the relation between two or more IDs, persons in your list. So you can see here we have someone who was the father of someone else. So we have the active and the passive entity of the relation. Again, another way of doing this kind of list, and we discussed this already yesterday, the difference between onomastics and prosopography, which is a very important difference, which, however, not all projects can have the luxury, let's say, of employ. And here again, you have the link to go to the guidelines and have a look at the page of the indexing of persons. Here, we saw that already yesterday. The authority list for the onomastic is this list nim with y, and here you do not have to add much information. This is just to This is almost a dictionary of personal names, if I can say so. For example, here you have the nim ref for Ioannis, the nim ref for Stephanos, and as you can see, within the nim, the item is signaled by an AB, so by an anonymous block. Then we go to the places that we saw already yesterday. And it's actually very interesting. And again, the guidelines here for the indexing of places. The authority list of places is, the list is called list place, and each item is place. So each item is within a tag called place. And again, here you can add, as we saw already yesterday, you can have at least the place name in one language. Here, as you can see, we have more than one language. So we have the ancient Greek and English, and so a very small parenthesis on the ISO language codes that we saw on the very first day of our teaching. Remember that GRC, it's ancient Greek. It's not modern Greek. Modern Greek would be EL. So if it's 3 digits, it's ancient Greek. So we have here in the first example, we have the name of Antiochia in 2 languages, so ancient Greek and English, and also one type of identification number, which is Pleiades. And we already saw it yesterday. You know what Pleiades is, and this is the link that points you to the Pleiades geographical gazetteer. In the second example, however, again, you see the 2 languages and so on and so forth, but you have a very interesting way of pinpointing a geographical entity, which is, not surprisingly, by geographic coordinates. And you have here, you see the element location, whose child is the element geo, and you get to put there your coordinates. Then we have events, I don't know if we will go through that again, but because Mitko already talked about this, but again, you can have a list event and each item would be an event and each event would have a label. And of course, being it an event, you can add a time frame, which can be either a when. We saw that whenever you have a when, it's a very precise date, just like in this case, the citizenship edict of Caracalla, or you can have a time span, so from to, as in this case, for example, the reign of Severus Alexander. Let's go very quickly over the external vocabularies. This is something that Gabby already talked about on the very first day of our teaching, a very good, a very important external vocabulary for epigraphic projects. It's the EAGLE vocabulary, so more than one, and the way of the vocabularies contain information regarding material, execution technique, type of inscription, object type, decoration, dating criteria, and state of preservation. And you can point to this information either in your metadata. So this is object type. We saw yesterday what this is in the TI header, and you can put a ref and directly to the EAGLE vocabulary, or you can put it in your authority list. So this way you kind of don't have to create an internal authority list, but I always prefer to create an internal authority list because you never know, it can always be reusable and so on and so forth. And yes, even if you have an internal authority list like this, you can still point with a CORESP to the external vocabulary of EAGLE. Then this is what is all about regarding authority lists marked up in EpiDoc and TI. And as I was saying at the very beginning of our talk now, is that authority lists exist independently from EFES. However, since we are using EFES, we ought to see how is their use in EFES. So, and this is what we are going to do today. The authority lists, we saw it already yesterday, they live in Web Apps Root Content XML Authority, which is one of the folders that you will touch the most during your use of EFES. And the most important thing that I've said 500 times in these days together is that the authority lists are of paramount importance because they're used to produce very important features such as indices and facets. So we already saw yesterday what indices and facets are. Today we're going to go into more detail, but indices, it goes without saying what they are, and facets, the facets are the filters of the search interface. So without authority lists, you cannot have these very important features. And as we saw yesterday, this is the reason why we created the RDF repository. The RDF repository is of paramount importance in order to harvest information from the authority list and to populate indices and facets. So to wrap it up, what are authority lists? Or better, how should the markup be in your file? In your file, you should have data or terms within the edition which point to the authority list in order for them to populate. Then each authority list has to contain at least an XML ID and a name for the indexing, and it can also contain additional information, as for example disambiguation, like this Ioannis is not the same Ioannis as this other inscription, so I will try and disambiguate the two of them. Then you can have, as we saw, the links to external vocabularies or to external resources and other information for example, interlinking, for display, and so on and so forth. So I will go back here and first of all ask you if you have any questions on the authority lists, on their use, on their deployment, and on what we should do with that. Because if not, let's just go and mark something up. So I will do that myself. I will share the screen once again. Nope. Yep, EFES master. And I will show you once more. So sorry, this is too this was too quick. So web apps, root, content, XML, and authority. So here leave all your authority lists. And let's open what should we open? I don't know. Mention place. And we already saw how it is made up, and it is best practice now that you're going to create another authority list. It's best practice to copy one that's already there and substitute the information. So we saw list place and everyone has a place, and here some has a link to Pleiades, some does not, but that's not a problem because not every geographic entity has a link on Pleiades, and that's completely fine. So let's create a authority list of people, let's say. What do you guys say? Or yes, let's do some people, because I don't see anything here relating to people. What do you see? Do you see a mention persons or prosopography? No, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see anything. So let's copy it. I've copied the one of the mention place, and let's call it persons or mentioned persons. No, persons, it's better. So I will cancel everything because we know that there's another element that you're using for the authority list of persons, which is list person. And within the list person, we have the person, of course. So let's go to one of the inscriptions that we did yesterday. So sorry, let me just let's do, so this one we didn't actually have a person, but we will still we will still, for the sake of the argument, use this same example for our authority list. So we had here the Odina, right? So which is not a person, but still, let's pretend. And we pointed here to a PBW entry, which was not, of course, the person we were referring to, but still. So now, let's delete the tag. And first of all, let's make an entry here. And we will have to give an XML ID. And we will call it, let's pretend it's called, I don't know. Then we can add a whole lot of information, such as, for example, first name, he's called Marcus. And we also cannot add, but still, this is in English. We can also have it in French. And we can have it in Italian and also in Latin, because we are imagining that this is a Latin person. Okay, then we can add a whole lot of information, such as, for example, the birth. When was he? On which day was he born? I don't know. Let's say when in year 2045. And we also happen to have the death of this person. Which was in year 345. He was very, very old when he died. And we have him. So now, how do we point to this Marcus in our authority list? It's always best practice to copy directly the XML ID, because otherwise you can also a typo can break everything. And we tag him as first name, and then with a ref, and we name our authority list with an hash. Huh? What do I have here? Okay, it's Italian, I'm sorry. So this is the way we refer to a person in our authority list. But I'm not quite happy yet, and we can tag someone else. And this is something that we did not show yesterday, but Oxygen, it's a very intelligent machine. And if you are here on a XML file and you click on open, it will open directly files from the folder you are already in, which is actually quite nice. So let's take another random inscription, which is not something that we did, but it's something that has been done within the YOSPE project. What was this? Was this YOSPE? Yes, YOSPE project. So here you see it has been already tagged. And let's, okay, I literally took the only one without personal name. Okay, no, this one. So here, IOSPE, they have an authority list, which is attested persons, but we decided to call it differently. So we will tag it, in another way. So let's pretend that we have here for example, this is too well tagged. That's a shame to destroy it. So we will just go back to our and pretend that there's another word there. Let's use the Hartophylax, and let's pretend that this is a name. But before we do that, we have to define another person item, right? And how are we calling him? We're calling him Julia. It is completely nonsense, right? So even if we're making mistakes, this is just to show you how it works. So again, we have our XML ID. We can copy it, and we can tag our Hartophylax as first name. No one will ever know. Then we have the ref. And then what do? We write persons.xml Julia. And then we have it. And this is for Cornelia. We can also add the sex here. So if you want to check all the females or all the male or all the eunuchs or everything, you can easily do that within the authority list. So now that we have our two items, what do we do? So we start our EFES. It takes some seconds, as you know. Okay, now always open an admin in another tab, as we already saw. And as you know, now we will have to index all, but also to harvest all, because we touched our authority lists, and and by doing that, we will need to harvest all the information from there, and to in order for them to display correctly. But first, before we do that, let's go and check that we saved everything. Remember, you have to save everything and always, because otherwise you can't give like the input to work correctly. So let's index all, and then let's harvest all. Okay, it succeeded, so we are happy. And as I said before, do always leave one tab open for the admin, because you will go back and forth, and it's quite cumbersome otherwise to, always click and go. So you have it here, and you can index and harvest all time. So first of all, we go to our inscriptions. That's here. and it's everything fine. So this has no impact whatsoever on the display of the inscription, right? However, we have here the indices. And it should not appear here because we did not yet create an index of people, because these two indices were already there in EOSPE. So even though they are personal names and prosopography, they do not come and fish, let's say, from our newly created authority list. So we will have to link these pieces of information. And in the search, also in the search interface, we will have to link this information to the facets, and this we will do it a little bit later. So this is how you create an authority list and how you mark up your text. However, now I would very much like to create or to add some new items to an already existing authority list so that we can have an immediate output. And we will do so by tagging the places that we already have here. Because do you remember here this Mopsuestia, we already tagged it actually, but since we did not have an authority list to tag it to, we had to use the Pleiades Gazetteer. We can do that, of course, but as we saw before, we can also have an internal authority list, which brings us nonetheless to the Pleiades Gazetteer. So let's add our item, and we already saw it yesterday. The best way to do it is to copy and paste an already existing item, and you change the XML ID, of course, because we already saw that this is unique. It has to be a unique ID. So that's how it has to be. Then we delete the Russian. And Mitko, can you write Mopsuestia in with accents and everything, because I have I do not have my polytonic Greek right now.
Okay.
Thank you. You're the one of the accents and of the breathings. That's great. And of course, it did not copy. Okay. Great. So we added a new item, and how do we point to it? We copy the XML ID. We go here. A little bit bigger so that everyone can see. We already have the place name, and now we refer to it by but you already know the drill. You know how to do that. However, and again, I have to ask the help from the public. Can you also give me the Pleiades link for that, Mitko? Because I deleted it from the XML file, so I can't retrieve it. Thank you. And how do we link it to an external gazetteer? We have an IDNO type Pleiades. And as you can see here, wait, let me just show it once again. When you have type, here you have already a list of external gazetteers, let's call them like that. For example, the VF, or also the DOI, and so on and so forth. So these are all unique identifiers. But in our case, we added the Pleiades one. And as content of the IDNO type, we have the link to Pleiades. Okay. Thank you, Mitko, for the VF also. Cool. Now, what do we do? But you already know that. We go to our admin, we index all. And we harvest all. That's great. Now, let's go to our inscription. Let's check here. Again, nothing has changed. But now we have to check the places out. So there has been, okay, we have it here. However, it seems that we have a small problem with the harvesting, and this kind of problem can be troubleshooted very easily. And I forgot to put this into the slide, but the guidelines of EFES are very clear about that, and I will show them to you here. Then these are the guidelines regarding the indices. We will go through them in a second. However, since we have a problem, so you can see the last paragraph here, Cation is calling problems. There might be a problem with the displaying part, and we can go around this by changing the timestamp on the imported style sheet indices-epidoc. And what does changing the timestamp mean? We only have to make a very small change in the file, which is, for example, add a remove a space and so save it again, and this should solve the problem. And the style sheet indices epidoc lives here. So we will see that in a bit, but since we are having a small issue. No, wait, I'm sorry. Where do you live? So here it is. So I can add and remove a space to change the timestamp. And I will also re-index and reharvest just to be sure. Not yet. Okay, this is new to me. However, it's working, and it's working, but it's not displaying as it should. So we should have here Cherson, Mopsuestia, and not the whole string. Another problem that could be is that the perhaps the newest EFES code, the newest EFES source code, perhaps I'm discovering it with you, has this new way of referring to the authority list, which, as I told you already, doesn't want, let's say, the name of the authority list before you have the hashtag. Let's see. We'll always have to reharvest because you never know. Did you? Toponyms. Oh, still not. Okay. There's some kind of problem that needs to be troubleshooted, but still, it is coming in our it is coming up in our index, and that's fine. And we, let's say, the last thing we have to check is if it comes up also in the search. So we have here the mentioned places, and there it is. So it means that the tagging is right, everything is correct, pointing to authority list is correct. There is a minor issue with the display, which is completely can be solved very easily, but that's it. So we have our nice inscription from Pelendri. So, questions up to now? Because otherwise I would like to go over the indices very quickly and to create a new index with you. So if that's not the case, I will share my screen once more and go to the indexing thingy. So wait, let me close everything here, otherwise we'll get super confused. And let's go to indices and to the guidelines of the indices. So we already talked a lot about indices. So this is just to show you where they live and how to create a new one, how to remove an existing one, okay? It's quite straightforward. Everything is very well documented in the guidelines of EFES under indices here, but you have the links and everything. It might seem like a lot of steps, but it's actually very easy and very straightforward. So just follow what I'm saying, and then we will do that together, okay? Just like we did yesterday. So, EFES customization indices. So first of all, what are we going to do? We are going to do, as I was saying before, what is in the EFES guidelines regarding the indices. So nothing more, nothing less, don't worry. First of all, we will explore EFES's default indices, which are to be found in home and then in indices. And the ones that you see here are the default indices of EFES that you can see here. Then we will try and remove an existing index, and the more interesting and juicy part, if I may, is that we're going to create a new one, okay? So you've seen them many times, you've explored them many times, and you know what they are. So EFES's default indices is what we saw beforehand. And as I was saying, EFES comes with the basic indices that each epigraphic project created out of the box might desire, and even more, if I might say. We already saw, but we will see them in a bit already, that each index, each page of each index is actually a table with 2 or 3 columns providing index entity and reference. For example, we saw before Mopsuestia appears in this and this description. And of course, if other information is applicable, then it's welcome. We will see, for example, the index of the numerals has the index entity of as it appears in our text. It has the value as we give in our tagging of the num element that we saw yesterday, and then has the reference. So this numeral has this and this value and needs to be found in this inscription. As we were saying, the reference, as we saw also yesterday, the reference points to a precise line in the XML file. We saw, for example, Jospe 5 dot blah blah dot 3. And this dot 3, which is not in bold, is the exact line in the XML file, and also takes editorial intervention into account. And these editorial interventions are signaled by square brackets. And we saw yesterday already that if a reference has square brackets around it, it means that it has been partially or totally restored by the editor. And it is very transparent. It is a very transparent way of doing things. Moreover, the reference is clickable and redirects you directly to the relevant XML file, but we already saw that yesterday. So we are now going and removing existing indices. So the list of indices lives here in Web Apps root content XML indices EpiDoc. So you know the drill until content and XML. And then in XML, you have a number of folders, which is content, which is EpiDoc, TI, authority, and indices. And for this specific operation, you will have to click on indices, and that folder indices has only one file, which is epidoc.xml. And this this file contains all the list of our indices. So it's pretty much a list of a list. It's a list. And how it is structured. So every index is contained within a div, and each div has an XML ID. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see here a div XML ID abbreviation. Then there's a div type head, which is the title of the index. And you can see here head, sorry, it's not a div type, sorry, it's just a head. You have a head with abbreviations, which is the title of the index. And then you have items within the div type headings, which are the headings of the table. So you have abbreviation, expansion, and references in this case, for example. Further, you can have additional information in prose in the div type notes, and the div type notes has you can see has list and item nested within it, and in this case the prose is that square brackets indicate that the name word is partially or completely restored in this inscription, and we already saw it. Then how do we remove that? We already saw it yesterday, and I will repeat it once again. To remove existing indices, we have just to comment out the whole div of the relevant index. And how do we comment out? We put this angle brackets, exclamation mark, slash, dash dash before the div, and the dash dash angle brackets after. So we do not delete our indices, but we just comment it out for all the reasons that we explained already yesterday, because it could be reused, because at a later point you might want to index your abbreviations, because it's better not to delete, but just to comment it out. Then, how to create new indices. But wait 1 second. Let's go and check all this theoretical information on an actual file. So where does it live? Web apps, root, content, XML, indices. So let's go there. Web apps, root, content, XML, and I was saying you have authority, EpiDoc, indices, and TI. You go to indices, and there's only one very lonely file, and that's it. So we have all the you have a body, and we have a div, and each div, I'm just collapsing them so that you can see all the indices that we have here. So these are the divs of the indices. We have div type symbol, abbreviation, fragment, numeral, word, lemma, person name, prosopography, divine, mentioned place, and institutions. So that's all the indices that we have. And say that we do not care about lemmata today. We do not care about them. So we have the head here, lemmata, we have the headings, so lemma, language, code, and references, and the notes. And in order to express our disgust for the lemmata today, we just have to comment it out. And this, as we were explaining yesterday, will be invisible to the machine. So we won't see the lemmata anymore. So let's try and see if this trick worked. And we go into our EFES and we try it again. It takes a bit. Okay. Then we go to the admin as per usual. And we index all, because you always index, even though we did not change any XML file, but still. And you harvest all, because we touched a little bit of the authority lists. So now go back home and we go to the indices. And even though we have here the lemmata, we don't have it here. And we have it here because this is part of the menu. We did not customize our menu. So we still have here the lemmata, but if we click on it, it will give us an error. So an empty page. And what matters for our purposes right now is that here we do not have our index. So that's as easy as it gets. But now let's go to the juicy part. So the creation of an index. It's all clear until now. Do we have more? Do you have any question? So if that is not the case, then we might go. Go on. And by the way, so just said it in parentheses. Of course, the thing that we are removing, we are deleting, we are commenting out an index, but this does not mean that the markup that led us to this index is removed. So we removed our index of lemmata, but this does not mean that the markup that brought us those lemmata is removed. So at some point in your project, you might not want to display the lemmata anymore, but you will need them, for example, for research purposes, then you still got them. So that's not a problem at all. So creating new indices, it's just 5 steps, and let's go through them. So let's go, first of all, in our so let's go first of all through the slideshow, and then let's do that together. So the steps are 5. It's very straightforward. And first of all, you have to go to this very same file that we just opened. So Web Apps Root Content Indices EpiDoc, and we have to create a new div with an ID for the index. So just like we removed the one of the lemmata, we have to create another one. Then we go in Web Apps Root Style Sheet Solar, and we create a new style sheet, which is called EpiDoc -name of your index -index to Solar XSL. So do not panic. You do not have to learn this by heart. You just have to copy an existing one and change the name of the file, first of all, and the Xpath to match the markup that you're wanting to index. This sounds like a lot of work, but in fact, it's not. Moreover, third step, you have to create a new template, which is called index-epidoc -name of your index. And this name of your index has to be, of course, consistent through all the changes that you're making. So this one on step 2 has to be the same of step 3, of course. And you create this new template, and it will live in Web Apps Root Assets templates. We shall see in a minute. And again, do not panic. This is just an identical copy of an existing one. You do not even have to open the file, because it is just an identical copy of an existing template. Step 4 only applies if we added extra fields in the schema, but we won't have the time to go through that. So I'll just point you to the guidelines that are very thorough in this case. Adding a new field, I don't remember if I already said that. Adding a new field means pretty much adding a new column to the template. So as you saw, for example, in the index of lemmata, you have the entry, you have the language code, and then you have the reference. But there are other indices, that have, for example, only 2 fields. Let's say the one of personal names that has entry and reference. But for example, you might want to have 4 or 5, as many as you have. And if you want to add new fields, new columns, you have to go and touch some other files that we will not do today. And step 0.5, you have to re-index everything through admin. So that's very, very easy, very, very straightforward. And now let's go. So this is not created yet, but I would very much like to do that with you. The index regarding dignities. So as we saw before, we have in this inscription a couple of them. We have Patriciu, we have what did I do? Okay, we have Patriciu, we have
Prefect Exploratorio.
We have many. So that's not that will not be a problem. So what do? We create a new div, and we give it an XML ID. Okay, and this XML ID has to be always the same. And for example, if now you write dignities plural, it always has to be plural. If you write dignity singular, it always has to be singular. So stick to one name, because otherwise it will break EFES and everything you've done will just disappear. No, I'm being too harsh on that. Just be consistent, because otherwise you will get confused. Then, as we were saying, the head is the title of the index, so dignities. Then within the div type headings, we have the 2 files, the 2 items which correspond to the first and the second column respectively. And then we have also these div type notes where we can add additional notes and remarks. So this is step 1, and this is in the file epidoc.xml. Then we have to create the style sheet, which has to have the same XML ID of what we of the div that we gave before. So dignities, once more, plural, and the style sheet has to be named EpiDoc dash dignities dash index to Solar. And how we do that, we copy an existing one and we change the name. And this has to be in web apps root style sheet Solar. We also have to change the Xpath to match the markup. And these changes that we have to make are circa on line 18 and line 36 of the file. And now we shall see. And this is the way we have to change our markup in order to match the markup of our XML files. So as we were discussing beforehand with Mitko and with Cornelia, this markup reads, this markup takes the RS, the reference string, into account. And this reference string has a type, and the type is dignity. And this type has a ref, and the ref points us to the authority list. So this seems very abstract by now, but now we will do that together. And the part here in pink is what you have to change on line 18. So you have to change here the markup in order for the XSLT to understand where they have to go and take the information for you to put in the index. And on line 36, again, what they have to match. They have to match the reference string. And we will see why this matters. And of course, we will only change this because we are indexing only things which are, only items which are in the edition, So here the Xpath tells you take the reference string, which has a type, which is dignity, and then as a ref. And all of this, its ancestor is a div type text part. And we know that we have div type text part subtype edition, and it is grouped by a ref. So it says, take everything which comes in the ref and group by them. Yes, step 3 is the creation of this new template, which has to be called index epidoc dignities.xml. And it has to be in this folder, web apps root assets templates. And as you can see here, I put a screenshot of our templates in our project, and we do not have to do anything. We just have to rename an existing one, and no further steps are required because the new template should be an exact copy of an existing one. So we can take, for example, this one, index epidoc Marian terms, copy, paste it, and just change the name into this. So step 4, as I was saying, this applies only if we have added further fields to our index, that is further columns. And for the creation of new XSL templates in this file, I am just pointing you to the guidelines, the relevant page of the guidelines. And that's how it should look like. So step 5, we only have to index all through admin and we're all done. And we deserve to be cherished because of this. So let's do this all together. But before we do that, do we have any questions? Or was it too much code for the morning? I think it's pretty straightforward.
I mean, for me, this part was a bit complicated, but I think when we exercise it, then it will be clearer.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. And I think a very important thing that I forgot to mention is that this thing has to be done once, because you don't have to create indices like every day. You create the index once, and then after you create the index, you only have to index your data. So this has to be done once, and then it does not change. So it's pretty complex at some points, but it just happens this once and then never again. Yes, Lina.
Yes, when you refer to that we have to stick to a single form dignity and dignities, I saw that dignity had a small d, not a capital, and dignities had a capital D. We do not take into consideration this difference, only if it's in plural or.
That's a great question, a super observation. Thank you so much. When I say that we have to stick to one form, so either plural or singular, either with capital D or with small d, it's in the file names and in the XML IDs. Because wait, I think I know where you saw the capital D, and it is here, right?
Yes.
Okay, this here is text, so it does not, here you can also write Lina, doesn't matter, because what matters is the XML ID and the name of the files. So this is pretty much only the name, only the title of the index. So here you can perhaps you saw it in the Xpath files that their index is called mentioned place, like this. And their head, so the title of the index is toponyms. Okay, so the thing that matters is this one. This is just the title that you want to give to your index. But it's a great observation. Thank you so much for this, and I will add it in the slides and in the guidelines, because it can be tricky. Yes, because yes, just because we know that doesn't mean that it has to be so implicit. So thank you so much. Then what were we going to do? So first of all, we have to mark something up in order for us to index it, right? And we want to index, let's say, dignities. Since we already have it, let's do that. So let's go in order. First of all, let's take another inscription. Let's ruin another inscription. And let's, where's the body? Let's take a Xpath one. Okay, let's. Okay, and then let's add the inscription here. I won't make everything, just I will just stick to the dignities. Was here, right? The cross. So I'll just do this. Now that I see this inscription, we did not mark unclear letters yet. So we will also do that. So what do we want to mark up? We have the Patricios, which is fine. And before we mark this, we also have to create an authority list for our dignities, right? But first thing that we can do is to mark this as an expansion, because it's okay. So now what do we have to do? We have to create an authority list, and we can browse through here. What am I doing? Sorry. We go here. Now you've learned it by heart too, I'm sure. And let's create an authority list, which we will call dignities, to start with this kind of name. So we have here a list person, but we do not want actually a list person. We want a list. And each list has at least one item. And because why I'm saying that? Because, as I was saying before, in order to tag an entity which is not already, let's say, indexable, like, for example, numerals, symbols, abbreviations, person names, place names, and so on and so forth, we can use a reference string. And if you're using a reference string, we will have to have a list with items and not something that something like, for example, a list event or a list org or a list persons or list places. And the way in which we refer to it, it's always the same. So dignities hash, how we're calling that, Patricios. And it's always the same, XML ID. Let's put it in Greek. And then we have to have a name. We have Greek. We have English. We have Italian, and we will not touch upon this matter, the multilingual features of EFES, but we will say something later today. That's why we are always putting things into more than one language, because one of the main features, one of the main plus, let's say, of EFES is that it has an embedded functions for a multilingual corpus. True. How is it in English? Yeah, I will always say Patricios, but
Patrician. Patrician, oder?
Yeah, it's patrician. I always say, I always just
I would give
transliterate.
also the Latin.
Yeah. Okay, we have the patricios here, and how we refer to that, we copy it, and we add it here. And also had a type, but okay. We can also add a type for the reference string, just in case that, just in order to disambiguate, since we will have many different reference strings, we say we can already see that they're not all equal. The element is the reference string, but then can have a different declension, let's say, of types. So we did this, we did that. That's cool. Now, first of all, let's kill EFES and let's see if the authority list has been taken into account. Okay, and we go to the admin page and we index all. And we harvest all. Let's go to the inscriptions. Which inscription was it? Jospe 511. Okay, so it's, I mean, the text is there. What am I doing? To do? Yes, of course, there's no index yet because we haven't created one yet, but we can check if the authority list has been taken into account, and it has been. You see it here, dignities. This means that the authority list has been taken into account, the tagging is correct, and everything. But since we do not have yet an index, which is called dignities, it can't be displayed here. And that's what we're going to create right now. So does someone want to tell me how to do that? By following the slides, of course. So first step is this one, right? So web apps, root, content, XML, indices, EpiDoc, right? We are creating another, we are copying the div, we're pasting it here, and we're calling it dignities. By the way, do you see here that if we copy the div and leave it like that, it gives us an error because the XML ID must be unique. And since we already have here a symbol, it says, hey buddy, what are you doing? You have to change it. So dignities, and we will call it dignities with a capital D. And then we have can have different headings. Like here, for example, but we only want 2 headings. So we want dignity and references, okay? And it's fine, square brackets indicate that the name word is partially completely restored. Okay, so we have created our div, okay? That's all right. Then we have to go to Web Apps root style sheet Solar and create a new style sheet. So let's go together. Web Apps root style sheets Solar. And do you see here all the here all these things that end with index to Solar. We choose one, and for our purposes, it's better than we choose one which has only 2 fields, such as, for example, the mentioned places. We copy, we paste it, and we change it into EpiDoc dignities index to Solar. Okay, so now you're going to learn a little bit of Xpath. So this is as you can see here from the extension of the file, this is not XML anymore, this is XSL. So this is this language is called XSLT, and there's a bit of Xpath in it. So this is called a template match. And what does this say? This says go, in this case, to every time that within the div type edition you find a place name which is followed by a ref, then you take it. Okay, and we have to change it into this. We have to change the path, and wait, let's do that together. Here we have rs type dignities. Whenever you have an rs which has type dignities and whose ancestor is TI div type edition, you have to group by this and that. We actually want it to group by ref, to be honest. So let's group it just by ref. No. Yes. No, we want it to group it by type, okay. So that's how you change it. And here, so it was line 18, right? And then we have line 36. So no, in this case, it's you can see here, it's not the ideal one that I chose, to be honest, because we do not have more than one file, more than one field. So we will just make it like this. And the other way that we have to match it is here, rs. So it should be working. Okay. Then, so I will show you another one just to see that, for example, the institutions. We have here, for example, type, role. That's everyone is different from the other, but it's still very important to know how to change them. So here, for example, the persons, that is the one that we already know. You say, go take the name-ref, group by name-ref, everything which is in the addition, and then the value of select would be the name-ref. So it's very, very specific. So let's check that everything is correct. It seems quite nice. Then, which is the other thing that we have to do? We have to go in web apps, root, assets, templates, and create and copy another template. So web apps, roots, assets, templates. Let's copy this one. This here, it does not matter. And I will open two of them and show you that they are the same. And here also we have to write dignities. So let's open this. This is a template. Let's open that. This is the very same template. So don't worry, you can take whichever you want, and that's it. Then this is not relevant to us. Then we have to index all, and then we're all done. But since we've been making many changes, I will kill EFES and then bring her back to life. Okay, then we index all. And we also check that we saved everything. Correct, correct. And we, in this case, we also have to harvest because we created a new authority list and we touched. So the rule of thumb, let's say, is that whenever you touch an authority list or something which is related to an authority list, you reharvest, just to be sure. Then you see here, dignities. And we have it, yeah. That's super cool. I still have to understand why it isn't displaying properly, but the important thing is that we have it, okay? Let me just change a very small thing to see if this is the problem. No, okay. Okay, this is displaying quite well, I would say. And we click onto there, and it brings us to our nice Patricio. So I'll stop it for a sec. It's quite straightforward. It's easy. Now, if you want, we can do it together, or we can mark up a couple of things more, and we can see how it works with more than one entry.
What are we going to do with all these fonts? This font in EFES, all these P's, the P letters, the font.
The P letters, the font. What do you mean?
I think the font is not suitable in the EFES.
No, it's not. It's not a font problem. It's not a font problem. Don't worry. It's you mean for the index?
No. When you show the inscription, the Greek original text.
Okay.
The Greek font, I mean.
Okay. Oh, we can change it. So this is the font which is by default in.
Yeah, and the P's they don't seem consistent with the rest of the.
They are kind of a little bit more intense of color.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we can change it. We changed it into. You can change it pretty much anything in any font you want. But this is CSS. We can also have a look at that.
That would be useful.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe Irene would say something about that. I
Oh,
don't
but
know what she's going to
no,
show.
it's actually very it's not an EFES thing, it's just a it's called CSS, and it lives here in web apps root, assets, styles, EpiDoc global, and this is the CSS. So this was not part of the thought training, but that's not a problem. The CSS, this global CSS kind of let's say manages the appearance. I don't know if you are at all familiar with HTML and web design, and the CSS is what underlies every like appearance thing of each website. So how do we do that? Whenever we have Greek language, we can just change into, you see here, font family, right? Let's say we'll put we should have changed it already. No, maybe we have to re-index, or also here, wait. Okay, let me. No. One sec. Let's take this. No, it has to be font family. So here is where you change it. Oh, I don't know why it is not changing, but still, I will figure it out in 1 second, and then I will show you how to do that, because we made it a long time ago. So perhaps there has to be another step that we are taking. Let me check. Because we are saying here, whenever you see Greek, use Times New Roman. But we can also say whenever you see the addition, see Times New Roman. But we will do that in a second. So that's not a problem. You can put pretty much any font you want. And we also added Athena Ruby, for example.
You click index, or how about harvest? Or
that's not a problem of everything.
It's not a problem, okay.
But perhaps we have to restart EFES. It's not a problem. We can also inspect the page. Let me check. Okay, you see here. Okay, it did not take into account the okay, for example, see here, you have Arial, and if you add so this was new Athena Unicode, right? So if we have I don't know, you have Palatino, for example. You can change pretty much any font you want. And I'm just doing this from a from the web page, but you can do this on that global CSS that I showed you before.
Okay, thank you.
So that would be it. If you're not on the verge of a breakdown, I would say that we can go on a well-deserved lunch break, and we will resume at 2 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken, with Irene too, and we will have a look at some features of search interface, and we will finish our work on the indices. Okay, that's cool. Sorry for being too harsh today, but that's, as I was saying, that's a thing that you're going to do once, and that's it. So you're not going to do that anytime soon after that. So